Youch! Hey, all you taxpayers. Government captivity Bippin here. Yeah, I don't even know where to start with this one. It's quite the story. There I was, chilling, until I discovered the hard way that the government had banned chilling. I was promptly shot at and discovered something that you'd probably know by now if you'd been watching my videos.
I can never die!
I've experienced it many times, the cold, dark void that is the afterlife, but every time I seem to come back in some miraculous way. The government saw it happen. This time I was put back together like when you build something in the LEGO games, so I was promptly apprehended and carted into a top-secret government laboratory. They are doing experiments on me as I speak. Horrific experiments if you couldn't tell from the intro, but can you guess who they got to experiment on me? Who, given your history of knowledge on Dead by Daylight and this series as a whole, and the title of this video, would be so dastardly as a choice to experiment on my body? That's right. House Herman Carter. Yeah. The doctor. There's a note attached to my brain that shocks me when I swear, kinda like my Singularity video, or even the South Park movie. To start things off, the Doctor was added in the Spark of Madness chapter, being the 4th ever DLC character added into the roster. For those that are curious, you can't even buy the Spark of Madness chapter anymore. It's not like the Stranger Things situation, but it's more so that they're now bundles. So, yeah. This was still in Dead by Daylight's early days, so don't you worry, we will cover a history time this episode. The Doctor is an original killer, and has remained as a long-standing pick to many for his easier yet stronger power. Let us begin by discussing said power, Carter's Spark. The Doctor's power is quite simple to use, giving you a leg up in chases and keeping survivors on their toes while they do other objectives. We will start with the main power, being shock therapy. Holding down your power button will cause the Doctor to charge an electric shock for 1 whole second before unleashing a 12-meter long cone of electricity on the ground. This blast doesn't work very well on stairs or any verticality, but can go through objects and walls. Any survivor caught in the zap zone will gain madness and shout, which comes with a slew of information that I will discuss later. You'll also know if you shock someone because the Doctor finds the thought of this extremely funny. Sick fucking freak. For now, we will focus on what shocking people means for you in a chase. Firstly, you don't have any cooldown for your shock therapy, meaning you can keep zapping right after your previous zap. Secondly, and most importantly, when a survivor gets shocked, there is a 2.5 second window following the shock where they will not be able to interact with anything. This means that in those 2.5 seconds, they won't be able to touch generators, heal, save from hooks, but most importantly, throw down pallets, vault windows, or open Instagram only to close it and then reopen it again. Essentially, to use your power effectively in chase, try to time your shock therapy around loops when a survivor is getting close to the pallet or window. If you shock them successfully, they won't be able to throw down the pallet or vault the pallet or window in time, rendering them vulnerable for an attack and making them look like stupid little vermin. It's because of this that survivors may take the route of throwing down the pallet instantly and looping you around the down pallet. You may still be able to counter this depending on how your loop is shaped, but it's all your judgment, really. Smaller loops are pretty easy to time with, but give them more room to fake or double back if they're really good at running you around. Longer loops are harder to hit your shock therapy with, but if you do, it's practically a game over for them. A lot of the time you'll also be looping survivors around walls, so you'll have to get good at predicting where they will be in the loop while shocking through a wall. It's also important to note that survivors don't get shocked the moment your shock therapy comes out. There is a 0.8 second delay of the attack coming out before it actually affects them. Factor this into your timing, as you may just catch them with the blast right as they make it to a window or pallet and go through with their animation. This sucks and it makes me want to kill somebody, like in real life. Alright motherfuckers, it's time for Doctor's secondary ability, the Static Blast. This is a chunkier ability that takes quite a while to charge up, acting as a great tracking tool for the Doctor. When the power gauge is full, hold your secondary ability button to charge your Static Blast for 2 seconds. Once fully charged, a blast will emanate from the Doctor in a radius around him, expanding as far as his current terror radius. Survivors caught in this blast will increase their madness. as well as have any actions interrupted. The only way to dodge a static blast, besides not being in the Doctor's tear radius, is to be in a locker. This ability has a varying cooldown, depending on if at least one survivor is in the range of it, being 45 seconds if one or more survivors are within the range, and 30 seconds if no survivors are in the range. Also, a little tip for survivors is that if you are within the range of the static blast and the Doctor is charging it up, you will hear a faint humming of electricity before the zap comes out. I've been saving the pretty important other half of the shock powers until now, so let me cover the madness tiers and what really happens when the Doctor f***ing zaps your ass. Basically, the madness you obtain from being shocked by the Doctor with either attack varies, but there are certain tiers with different effects that you can reach. For starters, survivors obviously begin the match with no madness, but will instantly enter tier 1 upon being shocked for the first time. It is very important to note that each time you level up in madness, your survivor will scream, revealing their location to the Doctor. You know, unless you take Calm Spirit like this one, mother. In Tier 1, though, not only will you scream, but skill checks will have a 33% chance to be a Madness skill check. These are pretty much regular skill checks, except they can show up on different parts of the screen, as well as can shake or go in the opposite direction. These are obviously just to trip you up and cause you to smash your keyboard out of a fit of rage. Tier 2 of Madness will, again, cause you to scream, but will also amp up the chance of a Madness skill check to 66%. On top of this, Illusionary Doctors, or hallucinations, will appear occasionally next to survivors, looking in their general direction. These aren't the most powerful things until we get to Tier 3, as all they do right now is just kinda spook the survivor. If it's someone's first time playing, they might think it's actually the Doctor and freak out a bit, but that's really it. Lastly, there is Tier 3 Madness, which will cause survivors to scream yet again, as well as intermittently scream every so often. Any skill check in Tier 3 is now guaranteed to be a Madness skill check, and the Illusionary Doctors are finally useful. They will have their auras shown to the Doctor now, which might seem useless at first, but can help the Doctor locate survivors when they show up, following the aura of his hallucinations. In Tier 3 for survivors, there will also be this constant droning noise, which makes things hard to hear and pretty annoying. The real meat of the Tier 3 side effects, though, are the fact that the survivors can't use any equipped item that they are holding, as well as can't perform or have performed on themselves any interaction that contains a progress bar. This means no healing, doing generators, unlocking chests, or doing totems, and so on. Unhooking survivors is still a thing you can do, though, or else that would be just a little too OP. While the effects of being in Tier 3 are pretty daunting, survivors can get rid of it with the snap out of it interaction. This can only be done in Tier 3 Madness and takes 12 seconds to complete. Holding the button down to snap out of it will cause the survivors to crouch down into almost fetal position and hold themselves, like I do on particularly bad days on the toilet. For the 12 seconds it takes, you will be faced with multiple Madness skill checks. Succeeding them continues as normal, but failing them will cause you to scream and reset the interaction to the last quarter you completed. Once finished, the survivor will reset back to Madness Tier 1. Editor Bippin here. I almost forgot to mention that each Madness level has a different look on the HUD. Survivors in Tier 1 have these horizontal lines, survivors in Tier 2 have the vertical lines, and survivors in Tier 3 have the little dots. Before I free you from talking your ear off about statistics, numbers, and functions, it is important to note that the Doctor's two different shocking attacks have different amounts that they tier up survivors by. Survivors hit by the Doctor's static blast will have their madness go up by 1 full tier, whereas survivors hit by the shock therapy attack will be inflicted with 0.5 madness, meaning it takes 2 zaps to tier you up. Okay, that's a lot of information. I know. But what did you expect? I'm literally getting experimented on right now. Like, as we speak. What else am I supposed to do? I'll finish this up by giving some generalizations/tips real quick. Number 1, shock therapy survivors around loops to get easy hits. Number 2, shock survivors that are out in the open multiple times to tear them up quicker. Number 3, in chases where survivors are aggressively using flashlights, try and zap them into Tier 3 so that they can't use them. Number 4, use the info from your hallucinations to locate sneaky survivors. Number 5, use your static blast to find survivors in the early game. And that's the Doctor's power, really. Honestly, it's pretty easy to use, but a little tricky sometimes to get the handle on in terms of timing around certain loops. Since this has already been going on for quite a bit, let's get right into The Doctor released on the 11th of May, 2017. Originally, the Doctor had a much different power. Even if it did work the same in some ways, it felt more sluggish to play with. Back then, the Doctor had to actually switch forms in order to zap people. He had treatment mode, which caused him to lift his arm and only be able to shock people, literally removing the ability to swing or damage survivors until you switched back to punishment mode, where he was just a normal M1 killer. Another change to the power was that in treatment mode, survivors passively gain madness for being within his terror radius, fluctuating based on their distance to the doctor. He never had a static blast attack, but the alternative was a lot easier for him back then. In order to find people at the beginning of the game, you would just walk around in treatment mode. Since survivors started with no madness, the moment someone entered your terror radius, they would get shocked and scream, revealing their location. The clunkiness of switching forms, however, resulted in a more difficult and annoying to manage cooldown where you would shock and then have to switch to damage people. I'm super glad they changed things because the new power feels a whole lot more streamlined, whilst keeping features from the original power. It really does make you think. What if some of the original killers with more outdated powers by now got a little pass like Doctor did? I'm curious, if you have an idea for any of the original killers, please do leave them in the comments. I would love to see your ideas. And that concludes our short history time with Bippin segment. It's really interesting to see how far the Doctor and his power have come in Dead by Daylight's current lifespan. Ow! Watch it, you donkey! If you're going to be operating on my brain while I'm doing this, stay clear of the areas that hold all my Dead by Daylight knowledge. If I forget that stuff, I am done for. Anyways, let's cover the Doctor's perks now. The Doctor comes with his 3 personal perks: Monitor and Abuse, Overwhelming Presence, and Overcharge. Let's start with Monitor and Abuse. This perk is quite unique, affecting your terror radius based on if you're in a chase or not. The Monitor portion comes in by reducing your terror radius outside of a chase by 16 meters, effectively halving the average killer's terror radius. The Abuse portion comes in by increasing your terror radius by 8 meters when in a chase. This perk I admittedly don't use often. It's pretty good for killers who want to be more stealthy, but even better on killers who already have a smaller terror radius by default, like Spirit, Hag, and Xenomorph when he's crawling around. It helps you get the drop on people quicker, so I'd say it's pretty adequate. There was a time before the FOV slider where this perk would also increase/decrease your FOV depending on when you get in a chase, but that was removed after the slider, and I also think that's because of motion sickness. It was pretty disorienting. Next up is Overwhelming Presence. This perk ain't that great, I'm not gonna lie. All it does is it makes survivors that are in your terror radius deplete their items at double the rate. It's not a bad effect per se, but so many other perks do this way better. I mean, using Franklin's Demise already surpasses this perk by a long shot. There's never really a scenario where this perk is better than others, I think. I don't know. Do people use this? Let me know. Lastly, there is Overcharge. Kicking a generator applies overcharge onto it, causing the next survivor who interacts with it to be faced with a difficult skill check. Failing said skill check instantly regresses the generator by 4% of its max progression in addition to the regular gen kick regression. On top of this difficult skill check, applying overcharge also causes the generator to regress at 130% for the next 30 seconds. This is the best of the Doctor's perks by far, and is generally a really good perk for slowdown builds. It makes kicking gens feel a lot more productive and worthwhile as well. And those have been the Doctor's perks. As a new addition, since I don't really cover them that often, I will be highlighting a good/fun/meme add-on combo for each killer at the end of these perk segments. I'll pick one of them and I'll highlight them for you. For the Doctor, I'm going to suggest the Perma Chaos combo. I never really covered this, but there are several different effects you can add on to the Doctor's Madness tiers, depending on the add-ons taken. This includes spawning illusionary palettes, having an illusionary red stain follow survivors, having survivors hear an illusionary terror radius, and so on. The Perma Chaos combo is the 2 iridescent add-ons, the Iridescent King, which basically slaps every add-on effect into one, and the Iridescent Queen, which gives survivors a static charge that can spread when they get close to each other. The point of this build being that the madness spreads quicker in groups, and each survivor becomes afflicted with several chaotic madness effects. The fun part about this is, as the Doctor, you don't even have to worry about doing anything but playing normally, and this will just kinda happen. Yippee! And those have been the Doctor's perks and add-ons. As for the perks, not super great, but Overcharge swoops in to polish a good chunk of the turd stains covering them as a whole. The Doctor remains as It's lore time, baby. Oh my god, what the fuck? Lore fact number 1. To summarize the lore, Herman Carter was an incredible student studying neuroscience and was brought under the wing of the CIA in order to explore potentially, mind control and experiment with the human psyche. He was situated in a secret black site facility in Illinois, what we know as Larry's Memorial Institute. His mentor, Otto Stamper, eventually gave Herman the tools and test subjects, oftentimes spies or any enemy of the USA, that he needed to further his horrific studies. It got to the point where he was only referred to as the Doctor, and the prisoners would beg guards not to be sent to Larry's for fear of being experimented on. As the years went on, the secrets of what was going on finally came to light as prisoners and patients were found in vegetative states with head trauma, and eventually, Herman's mentor, Otto, was found with his head peeled open with a bunch of electrodes and shit inserted into his brain. How fun. Wait, isn't this guy experimenting on me right now? Lore fact number 2. Otto Stamper, the mentor in Doctor's lore, is actually the same Otto Stamper that is the leader of the cult called the Fold, which, if you know the Dredge from this game, is tied in with his whole story. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really covered the Dredge yet, so stay tuned. Lore fact number 3. Did you know that originally, the Doctor's hallucinations / illusionary clones weren't programmed to match your outfit? That meant that the survivors back then were able to tell the clones apart pretty easily if you had any cosmetics equipped. It's fucking stupid. Lore fact number 4. The Doctor was the first of the OG batch of killers that got their own menu and chase music updated. He used to have the default one for a while, but it was updated in 2020. And when I say OG batch, I don't mean the original 3 that came with the game, I just mean like the handful of really old killers. Lore fact number 5. The Doctor might not even be a doctor. It's part of his lore that people don't even really know if he has a medical degree or license, but, you know. He's the Doctor. Lore fact number 6. According to the OG game files and some early renditions of the chapter, the Doctor and Larry's Memorial Institute map were going to be more Chinese / Korean themed. There were certain add-ons in the game's files that hinted at this, as well as the Doctor's original name being listed as, sorry if I butcher this, Mu Yi. And there's a video from the devs of Larry's having Chinese signage. At least I think that's Chinese. Also, according to my sources, this was because Dead by Daylight had become extremely popular in China, so Behavior had promised a new Chinese-inspired killer. This led to a crazy real-life inspiration for the Doctor, being a real-life Chinese professor named Yang Yongxin. I also hope I'm not butchering that. To sum things up pretty quickly, he was a psychiatrist who used electroshock therapy to try and cure internet addiction in teenagers. Long story short, it was pretty sadistic, and probably what also inspired Feng Min, the pro esports player and survivor included in the chapter. It's safe to say that Behavior is pretty strict on not glorifying real-life criminals, psychos, and murderers, so this is probably what inspired the last-minute redesign for the Doctor into an African-American student. If you want to know the full story, I would advise you go check out Mint Skull's video on the Doctor and how he changed over the years. It's a great deep dive into the development of this character. Lore fact number 7. The Doctor's current backstory may be a reference to MK Ultra. If you're unaware of what this is, it was a real-life CIA research project that ran from 1951 to 1978, experimenting with unethical methods of mind control and interrogation. Glad I'm finding out horrific real-life things from the DBD wiki of all places. Lore fact number 8. The Look-See is a skin for the Doctor that turns him into a character from the Crypt TV official YouTube channel. If you haven't checked out Crypt TV, they are a pretty awesome horror YouTube channel that publishes mini horror movies. Short films, if you will. They've got a ton of great designs and monsters that are really super cool, and I would definitely recommend you go check them out if that's your type of thing. Lore fact number 9. In the earlier days of the Doctor, survivors used to encounter jump scares of his face flashing on screen when maddened. While this was very spooky and added a lot of much needed horror to the game, it was removed shortly after due to epilepsy concerns amongst other issues. Lore fact number 10. Not entirely a lore fact, but there's a weapon you can buy for the Doctor in the store that replaces his spiky baton thing with a straight up baseball bat. I just think it's neat. And that's really it. If I were to rate the Doctor, I would give him a 7 out of 10. Overall, his design is really creepy. I think they nailed the gruesomeness of his visual design and the backstory and the map as well. The updated chase and menu themes fit him very well, and his Mori is also alright. Where my rating comes down a bit is the power. It's not all too fun to use in my opinion, and for that I don't really play the Doctor often. He does seem decently strong though, so my rating rests at a comfortable 7. Anyways, that about wraps up the 101 video, and good timing too, because I'm about to get my diagnosis. Maybe now I will actually find out what's going on with this whole immortality thing I got going on. Alright, lay it on me, Doc. Yes. Oh. I see. You guys... I've just been informed of something very earth-shattering. They were unable to pinpoint the exact cause of my immortality. However, they figured out what could be a big factor. They just told me that I'm not human. As a matter of fact, I'm an ancient eldritch deity. One that has been reincarnated and is hiding under the guise of a 22-year-old man. Yes, I'm 22, you f***. I've just now been released from the facility, and I'm going to be going home, thankfully. However, I'm supposed to come back for regular testing so that they can further communicate to this being and find out answers. Whew, this is quite catastrophic, guys. Anyways, that's been the Doctor 101. I'm gonna go make some pizza rolls and stare at the wall for a while. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, look at me with a straight face and tell me that they didn't base the Doctor off of Dr. Hibbert from The Simpsons. I mean, like, they're both doctors, they're both African-American, they both laugh a lot, very creepily sometimes. I mean, it's literally right there. I mean,